By late 2025, something happened in Iran that triggered immediate adjustments to American military posture across the Middle East. Not a public announcement, not an official statement, but intelligence reports and military observations detected something that fundamentally changes the threat calculation. Iran tested a missile with flight characteristics different from anything in their known arsenal, not just another ballistic missile test. Iran has conducted hundreds of those over the years. This was different. The flight profile, the trajectory, the speed characteristics all suggest capabilities that American missile defense systems in the region were not optimized to counter. Reports filtering through defense channels by late 2025 indicate the missile may have hypersonic characteristics, potentially glide capability, maneuverability during flight that makes interception far more difficult than traditional ballistic missiles, range that could threaten U.S. bases across the Gulf and potentially beyond. The exact specifications remain classified. Iran hasn't officially announced the test or capabilities, but U.S. intelligence detected it, and the response is visible in adjusted defense postures across the region. Additional Patriot batteries deployed to bases in Iraq, THAAD systems repositioned in Gulf states, Aegis destroyers with ballistic missile defense capabilities moved to positions covering critical facilities, early warning assets enhanced. The defensive adjustments are happening quietly but systematically. Here's why this matters beyond just another weapons test. American military presence in the Middle East depends on the assumption that U.S. forces and bases can be defended against Iranian missile threats. Thousands of American troops in Iraq, Syria, Kuwait, Qatar, UAE, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, massive air bases, critical command facilities, all operating on the assumption that Patriot and other defense systems provide adequate protection. If Iran developed missiles that can penetrate or evade those defenses, the entire American military posture in the region becomes vulnerable. Bases become targets that can be hit despite defenses. American casualties in any Iran conflict could be catastrophic. The deterrence equation changes completely. American forces are adjusting because the threat changed, but the adjustments reveal vulnerability. If existing defenses were adequate, adjustments wouldn't be necessary. The repositioning and reinforcement signals that U.S. military planners assess that previous defensive posture was insufficient against new Iranian capabilities. Think about what it means when adversary develops weapons that force you to adjust your entire regional military deployment because existing defenses are inadequate. So here's the question that reveals the strategic shift. How did Iran develop missile capabilities with flight profiles that U.S. defense systems are not optimized to counter, forcing American military commanders to adjust regional defense posture by repositioning assets and reinforcing defenses, revealing that the assumption of adequate protection for U.S. forces in the Middle East against Iranian missile threats may no longer be valid? And what does this mean for American strategy when the vulnerability of forward-deployed forces to Iranian missiles increases the potential cost of any conflict to levels that may make American military options less credible? I need to warn you about something. The missile test and defensive adjustments are real developments based on intelligence assessments and observable military movements by late 2025. But the exact capabilities of the Iranian missile and the specific vulnerabilities it exploits remain classified. What's clear is that U.S. military planners assess the threat sufficiently serious to require immediate defensive posture changes across the region. This suggests the missile represents meaningful advance in Iranian capabilities that existing defenses were not fully prepared for, and the vulnerability this creates is forcing reassessment of American military posture in a region where thousands of troops and critical facilities are potentially exposed to threats that may not be adequately countered by current defensive systems. Let me start with what makes this missile different based on what can be inferred from defensive adjustments and intelligence reporting. Traditional Iranian ballistic missiles follow predictable trajectories. They launch, ascend, follow ballistic arc, descend to target. The trajectory is calculable. Missile defense systems like Patriot and THAAD are designed to intercept missiles following these ballistic trajectories. The system works by detecting launch, calculating trajectory, positioning interceptor to meet the incoming missile at calculated point. If trajectory is predictable, interception is possible given sufficient warning time and capable systems, but missiles with different flight profiles break this system. Hypersonic missiles fly at speeds exceeding Mach 5. At those speeds, reaction time for defenders is compressed. The time between detection and impact is so short that interception becomes extremely difficult. Hypersonic glide vehicles are worse. They don't follow ballistic trajectories. They can maneuver during flight, change direction, adjust altitude. The trajectory is not calculable in advance. Defense systems cannot predict where to position interceptor because the missile can move unpredictably. If Iran tested missile with these characteristics, it represents major capability advance. American missile defenses in the region are optimized for ballistic threats. They're less effective against maneuvering hypersonic threats. The defensive adjustments, repositioning Patriot batteries, moving THAAD systems, enhancing early warning, all suggest U.S. commanders are trying to improve coverage against threats that current deployments don't adequately address. But here's the problem. No missile defense system is perfect against advanced maneuvering threats. Repositioning helps, more coverage helps, better early warning helps, but fundamentally, hypersonic maneuvering missiles are very difficult to intercept with current technology. If Iran has these capabilities, American bases in the region are vulnerable in ways they weren't before. And the defensive adjustments can reduce but not eliminate the vulnerability. Now, let me tell you about American military presence in the region, because understanding the exposure explains why this matters strategically. U.S. has approximately 30,000 to 40,000 troops deployed across the Middle East as of late 2025. Exact numbers fluctuate, but the scale is substantial. These forces are spread across multiple countries. Iraq, several thousand troops at bases including Ain al-Assad and Erbil. These bases came under Iranian missile attack in January 2020 after Soleimani assassination. Troops sustained traumatic brain injuries. Iran demonstrated ability to hit these bases with ballistic missiles. If Iran now has harder to intercept missiles, these bases are more vulnerable. Syria, roughly 900 troops at small bases in eastern Syria. Exposed positions in areas where Iranian-backed forces operate, vulnerable to missile or drone attack. Kuwait, several thousand troops, major logistics hub. Ali al-Salem Air Base is critical for regional operations, essential facility that would be high-value target in any conflict. Qatar, Al Udeid Air Base hosts over 10,000 American personnel. This is the largest U.S. air base in the Middle East, forward headquarters for CENTCOM, critical command and control. Losing Al Udeid would cripple American air operations regionally. UAE Al Dhafra Air Base hosts several thousand American personnel, another critical air facility. Bahrain, naval support activity. Bahrain is headquarters for 5th Fleet, several thousand personnel, critical for naval operations in Gulf. Saudi Arabia, smaller deployments but still significant. Prince Sultan Air Base and other facilities. Every one of these locations is within range of Iranian missiles. Iran has missiles with ranges exceeding 2,000 kilometers. All U.S. facilities in the region are targetable. The protection of these facilities and the troops in them depends on missile defense systems, Patriot batteries, THAAD systems, Aegis ships. If those systems cannot reliably intercept new Iranian missile types, the entire American presence is vulnerable. American strategy assumes that bases can be defended, that casualties in any conflict would be manageable, that Iranian missile attacks could be largely defeated by defenses. If these assumptions are wrong, the entire strategic calculus changes. By late 2025, the defensive adjustments signal that assumptions are being questioned. The new Iranian missile capabilities may have shifted the balance from confidence in defenses to uncertainty about whether defenses are adequate. Let me show you what this means for American strategy toward Iran, because the vulnerability affects deterrence and options. American policy toward Iran relies partly on military options being credible. The threat of strikes against Iranian nuclear facilities, against Iranian military targets, against Iranian leadership. These threats are meant to deter Iranian behavior and coerce compliance with American preferences. But military options are credible only if they can be executed without unacceptable costs. If striking Iran means Iranian retaliation against U.S. bases kills hundreds or thousands of American troops because defenses cannot stop the attacks, are the strikes worth it? American public would not tolerate hundreds or thousands of casualties in Middle East conflict unless absolutely vital interests were at stake. Iran's nuclear program is concerned, but not vital enough to accept catastrophic casualties. Iranian regional activities are problems, but not worth massive American casualties. If Iranian missiles can penetrate American defenses and cause significant casualties, American military options against Iran become less credible because the costs become unacceptable relative to the stakes. This shifts deterrence balance. America tries to deter Iran through threat of military action, but if military action becomes too costly, the threat lacks credibility, Iran can call the bluff. By late 2025, Iranian missile advances may be shifting this balance. American defensive posture adjustments reveal concern that costs of conflict increased. This concern reduces credibility of American military threats. Iran gains confidence that American threats are hollow when costs are calculated. The strategic effect is that Iranian room for maneuver increases. Iran can be more aggressive regionally because American military options to stop Iranian behavior are constrained by the potential costs of conflict. Now let me tell you about the technology dimension, because understanding how Iran acquired these capabilities reveals broader problems. Iran's missile program has advanced significantly over the past decade, not through indigenous development alone, through technology acquisition from Russia, China, North Korea, through reverse engineering, through indigenous innovation building on foreign assistance. Russia has reportedly provided Iran with missile technology and expertise, not necessarily complete systems, but technical knowledge, design assistance, components. The relationship deepened after 2022 when Russia needed Iranian drones for Ukraine and reciprocated with technology sharing. China has historically been source of Iranian missile technology. Chinese assistance to Iranian program dates back decades. While China officially restricts missile technology proliferation, technology has flowed through various channels. North Korea has openly cooperated with Iran on missiles. North Korean missiles and Iranian missiles show similar design characteristics suggesting technology sharing. North Korea's hypersonic glide vehicle tests in recent years may have shared technology with Iran. The point is, Iran's missile advances aren't just indigenous Iranian engineering. They reflect global technology proliferation that American non-proliferation efforts haven't stopped. And by late 2025, the proliferation has reached the point where Iran possesses capabilities that threaten American forces regionally. American strategy assumed technology proliferation could be controlled. Sanctions, export controls, international agreements, all meant to prevent adversaries from acquiring advanced weapons. But the strategy failed. Technology proliferated anyway. And American forces face consequences. Let me show you what the regional allies are thinking, because their calculations matter for American strategy. Gulf Arab states host American bases on their territory. They do this partly for security guarantees. American presence is meant to protect them from Iranian threats. But if American bases are vulnerable to Iranian missiles, hosting American forces becomes liability rather than asset. Iranian missiles that can hit American bases can also hit Gulf state infrastructure, oil facilities, desalination plants, power stations, financial centers. Gulf states are extraordinarily vulnerable to missile attacks because their economies depend on concentrated infrastructure. Gulf states are calculating. If conflict between U.S. and Iran occurs, Iranian retaliation would devastate Gulf economies even if America eventually defeats Iran militarily. the costs to Gulf states of American-Iranian conflict are potentially catastrophic regardless of outcome. This calculation is driving Gulf states toward de-escalation and accommodation with Iran. Saudi-Iran reconciliation in March 2023. UAE engaging Iran diplomatically. Oman maintaining dialogue. Gulf states are hedging because they recognize they're vulnerable, and American defenses may not protect them adequately in conflict. By late 2025, Iranian missile advances reinforce Gulf hedging. If Iranian missiles can threaten American bases despite defenses, Gulf states conclude their own facilities are even more vulnerable. This drives accommodation with Iran rather than reliance on American protection. American strategy of maintaining regional presence to reassure allies is undermined when the presence itself becomes vulnerability, and allies conclude accommodation with threats is safer than relying on American protection. Now, let me tell you what this means for Israel, because Israeli calculations are distinct from Gulf Arab states. Israel views Iranian nuclear program as existential threat. Israeli strategy has been to pressure Iran through covert operations and prepare military options if nuclear progress continues. But Israeli military options against Iran depend partly on American support and American bases in region. Israeli strike aircraft need American bases for support. American intelligence is critical. American political backing is necessary if American bases in region are vulnerable to Iranian retaliation, and America is less willing to risk conflict with Iran because of potential casualties. Israeli options are constrained. Israel, by late 2025, is reportedly accelerating independent military preparations, more long-range strike capabilities, enhanced air defenses, possibly nuclear weapons advancement. Israel is preparing for scenarios where American support is unavailable or insufficient. The Iranian missile advances and American defensive adjustments signal to Israel that American military options against Iran are more constrained than previously. This drives Israeli independent preparation and increases risk of Israeli unilateral action. Israeli strike on Iran without American coordination or consent becomes more likely if Israel concludes American constraints prevent adequate response to Iranian nuclear progress. This creates escalation risk that American policy hoped to avoid. Let me show you what happens if Iran-U.S. conflict actually occurs, because the scenario reveals why missile advances matter. Scenario: conflict escalates, maybe over nuclear program, maybe over Iranian actions in region, maybe over incident spiraling out of control, U.S. conduct strikes against Iranian targets. Iran retaliates with massive missile barrage against American bases, hundreds of missiles, some ballistic, some cruise missiles, some drones, and some with the new advanced capabilities, hypersonic maneuvering, difficult to intercept. American defenses engage. Patriot batteries fire interceptors. THAAD systems engage. Aegis ships launch SM-3 missiles. Many Iranian missiles are intercepted, but not all. The advanced missiles are particularly difficult to stop. Some missiles get through. Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar is hit. Aircraft destroyed, runways cratered, command facilities damaged, casualties, dozens or hundreds of American personnel killed or wounded. Iraqi bases are hit, casualties mount. American troops in exposed positions in Syria take casualties from Iranian-backed militia attacks coordinated with missile strikes. Total American casualties, potentially hundreds killed, thousands wounded in initial Iranian retaliation. This is first hours of conflict, before American forces fully respond. Just the immediate Iranian retaliation. American public sees casualties. Congress demands answers. Why did defenses fail? Why are troops exposed to attacks we can't stop? Political pressure for withdrawal builds. American military campaign continues. Strikes against Iranian targets intensify. But Iranian facilities are hardened and dispersed. Eliminating Iranian capabilities requires sustained campaign. Meanwhile, Iranian retaliation continues. More missile attacks, attacks on shipping in Gulf, cyber attacks on American infrastructure. American casualties continue mounting. Within weeks, American casualties could exceed 500 to 1,000. Public support collapses. Political pressure for ceasefire becomes overwhelming. American military campaign ends without achieving objectives because costs became unacceptable. This scenario is why missile advances matter. If American defenses cannot adequately protect forces, casualties in conflict could reach levels that make conflict unsustainable politically. And Iran knows this. Iranian strategy is explicitly to make American military action too costly through threats to American forces. By late 2025, Iranian missile advances have improved Iran's ability to execute this strategy. American defensive adjustments reveal concern that Iranian capability to impose costs increased. Now let me tell you what American options are, because they're all difficult. Option 1, accept increased vulnerability. Keep forces in region. Improve defenses as much as possible. Accept that perfect defense isn't possible. Proceed with regional strategy despite risks. This maintains American presence and commitments, but exposes forces to attacks they may not be adequately protected from. Morally and politically difficult to deploy troops to positions where defenses are known to be inadequate. Option 2, reduce forward presence. Pull back from most exposed positions, consolidate at fewer, better defended locations, reduce vulnerability by reducing exposure. But this weakens American presence and influence. Abandoning bases in Iraq or Syria means losing intelligence and operational positions. Signals American retreat, encourages Iranian expansion. Gulf allies lose confidence. Option 3, develop better defenses. Invest massively in advanced missile defense technology, hypersonic interceptors, directed energy weapons, space-based sensors. Build defenses that can counter advanced threats. This is a long-term solution, but takes years and costs hundreds of billions. Doesn't solve 2025-2026 vulnerability. And even advanced defenses may not be perfect against continually evolving threats. Option 4, preventive action. Strike Iranian missile capabilities before they can be used. Destroy missiles, launch sites, command facilities preemptively. But this starts war. Iran retaliates with whatever capabilities survive the strikes. Escalation is massive. Regional stability collapses. American casualties from retaliation could be significant even if many Iranian capabilities are destroyed. Every option has major drawbacks. Accepting vulnerability risks casualties. Withdrawal loses influence. Better defenses take years. Preventive war causes massive escalation. By late 2025, American strategy is caught between bad options because Iranian missile advances created vulnerability without obvious solution. Iran just tested a new missile profile. U.S. forces adjusted regional defense posture. The adjustments reveal that existing defenses may be inadequate against new Iranian capabilities. By late 2025, American military presence across the Middle East faces increased vulnerability. Thousands of troops at bases within range of Iranian missiles that may be able to penetrate defenses. The assumption that forces could be adequately protected is questioned. This affects American strategy fundamentally. Military options against Iran become less credible when costs could be catastrophic. Deterrence weakens. Iranian room for maneuver increases. Allies hedge toward accommodation with Iran. And American responses are limited. Can't withdraw without losing influence. Can't build perfect defenses quickly. Can't preventively strike without starting massive war. Can't easily reduce vulnerability without major strategic costs. The missile test changed the threat calculation. The defensive adjustments reveal American concern, and the vulnerability exposed creates strategic problems without clear solutions. Iran developed capabilities that threaten American forces in ways that existing defenses don't adequately counter. And by late 2025, American military planners are adjusting as best they can to threats they're not fully prepared for. Think about what it means when adversary develops weapons that make your forward deployed forces vulnerable, and your response is to reposition defenses while hoping they're adequate despite knowing they might not be. That's American position in Middle East by late 2025. Vulnerable, adjusting, hoping defenses work. but uncertain. Iran tested new missile profile. U.S. forces adjusted defense posture, and the adjustment reveals vulnerability that changes everything about American military position in the region.